Hello, Gesneriad Society. My name is Dawson. I'm a postdoc at the Harvard University Herbaria and a researcher at the Field Museum in Chicago. It's a pleasure to be able to share with you all today some of this research on plant diversity and extinction at Centinela in Ecuador with a special focus on Gasteranthus. The story of Centinela was first told in 1991 by these legendary botanists Cal Dodson and Al Gentry in this article, Biological Extinction in Western Ecuador. Their keynote about extinction in this article was Centinela, which they said is a prominent mountain ridge extending off the main chain of the Andes, covered in cloud forest, and holding the most botanically rich cloud forest they'd ever recorded. Moreover, it held an extraordinary 90 plant species endemic to the Centinela Ridge, that is to say, don't grow anywhere else in the world. But they concluded in this article that the forest had been entirely destroyed and converted to agriculture. So this was a foundational paper for conservation biology, and it generated a new term, Centinelan Extinction. This term was generated by E.O. Wilson to describe the hemorrhagic loss of diversity caused by clear cutting of tropical forests holding unique species. So this was a successful alarm call. But there was something really missing from this article, actually, and that was the data. There was no list of collections, no list of species made at Centinela, and not even a list of these 90 endemic species. So, along with a great group of collaborators, we are reinvestigating the collections made at Centinela to generate this list and test the Centinelan extinction hypothesis. And Gasteranthus holds a special place in this story, because while Dodson and Gentry didn't publish the list, they did write about their observations of Gasteranthus. And so they said, on Centinela there are, or were, no fewer than 6 Gasteranthus species, a quarter of the world total. And 4 of these are restricted to the southern tip of the ridge. So, the question is Centinela really a Gasteranthus grave? In addition to these 4 species, did 86 others actually live exclusively at Centinela and go extinct there when deforestation occurred? So there's really only been one other study that has tested this hypothesis of extinction, and it's focused on Gasteranthus because this is one of the only groups of plants that was mentioned in the original article. So in the year 2000, Lawrence Skog and Lars Kvist published this monograph of Gasteranthus. And from their studies of collections, they determined 2 results that are important with respect to Centinela. The first is that there are actually 8 Gasteranthus that had been collected at that site. And the second is that one of these collections was actually a new species. And it was the only one, in addition, that was only known from Centinela. And so, it was likely extinct as well. They gave this new species the name Gasteranthus extinctus. And so if we look at this study by these researchers, we get a very different picture of endemism at Centinela. Instead of having 4 out of 6 species be endemic to Centinela, we now had 1 out of 8, so a big reduction there. And what we wanted to do then is go in and look at all of the species that had been collected at Centinela, all of the collections, and really know what that number is. How many plant species are known only from Centinela? But we needed to get more inside Dodson and Gentry's head, more inside their data to do this well. And luckily, we've been able to do this because we found an unpublished checklist of the flora of Centinela. So, this list was found among Gentry's things at the Missouri Botanic Garden. There are 1,130 species or morphospecies on this list, and most importantly, we have voucher specimens, so actual collections deposited in herbaria that are associated with these names that they attributed to this flora. Right here you can see a portion of the list for Gasteranthus. We have the 6 species they mentioned there in their article. We crossed off Onchogastrus because it's been put in synonymy with Carinatus. And then that last one, which was called pubescens on their list, is actually extinctus. Pubescens was never a published name. And so We have then gone in and searched herbarium records, searched GBIF records, and studied the literature to try and fill in this full list of everything that's been collected at Centinela. And in my conservation talk, I go into the details of those studies. But for here, let's talk about Gasteranthus. So with this new data set, there were six Gasteranthus mentioned by Dodson and Gentry in 1991, 2,000 put in the window by Skagenquist, 8 by Skagenquist in 2000. And with our research, there are then 10. So I'll now rectify the blatant lack of photos, and I'll go through and show you pictures of these 10 species along with a map showing their distributions with GBIF records. And also on this map, the star indicates where Centinela is. So first we have 2 endangered species, Gasteranthus macrocalyx as well as Gasteranthus timidus, are both endemic to Western Ecuador and also have records that extend both to the north and to the south of Centinela. 2 more endangered species, Gasteranthus carinatus and Gasteranthus perennis, are mostly known from Western Ecuador, again with specimens reaching north and south of Centinela. But there's actually 1 record for each of these species that's on the other side of the Andes in the Amazon basin. Next we have Gasteranthus glaber, which is locally abundant in northwestern Ecuador and reaching into southern Colombia, and a similar pattern with Gasteranthus crispus. But with the Colombia collection, it's all the way up in Antioquia, and that specimen has been vetted by John Littner Clark. Then we have some of the widespread species, Calcaretus and Gasteranthus corallinus, which extends over and down the Amazon River. Lastly, we have our 2 critically endangered taxa. The first doesn't get much attention because it's fairly common in the horticultural trade, I understand. But Gasteranthus atratus has been collected at Centinela 6 times, but otherwise it's only known from 1 collection in the Cotopaxi province, and that collection unfortunately has pretty bad locality data, so we're not quite sure where exactly it's from. So that is a very rare species. In addition to atratus, then we have the aforementioned Gasteranthus extinctus. Going back outside of Gasteranthus, when we've gone through the whole list of all the species, we've determined that there are 4 species known only from Centinela. And so this is our hypothesis of the extinction cemetery at the Centinela Ridge. These 4 species, Gasteranthus extinctus, 2 trees, a murus and browniopsis, and an orchid, Tucheria integralabria. But we weren't happy with the story ending here, because we wanted to see the ridge for ourselves. So in the year 2021, our team, representing several Ecuadorian institutions as well as other international institutions, converged in Quito, and we drove down to see the ridge. And here on the horizon you can see the Centinela Ridge from the town of Patricia Pilar. And we drove straight to the top that first afternoon, and when we got there, we made our first discovery. There are intact, healthy forest fragments still on Centinela, holding amazing plants and animals. And so with this discovery on the first day, our focus now with our work at Centinela has shifted towards conservation. And with that focus, the most important thing for us to do is record all of the threatened and endemic species that have survived in these forests. And the most important of those is Gasteranthus extinctus, because of its name and the fact that it's one of the 4 species only known from Centinela. And on the first day, we found it. But not just at one site. We actually found Gasteranthus extinctus at 5 different places, and another place on iNaturalist. And in addition, we found atratus and many other new and otherwise threatened species. So Centinela is not a grave for Gasteranthus, nor I think for any other species. The story now is that Centinela lives. Here's a link to our website where you can keep up with ongoing news and find ways to join our team and help ensure the conservation of Centinela's forests. Thank you all.